Now instead of this, I want to say that suppose I have different routes. For example, this was just when I just called my localhost 8000. Suppose if I call localhost 8000 slash about slash contact or things like that, what would I get? Okay, so here instead of this, I hope everyone knows if else conditions in JavaScript. What I can do is I can simply say that if path equals slash, okay, path equals slash. Actually, I'm gonna say that if path equals slash, that means you're going to return home page. Okay, you are going to return home page HTML page. Okay, this is some HTML page. And instead of this, if someone has actually called something else, okay, for example, if someone has said if path equals about, then what you're going to say, this is the about page. And similarly you can create different page, but I'm going to say that apart from this, if anyone has requested some other API route, that is either it can be home page, either it can be about page, but apart from that, I'm going to say 404 not found. Okay, so I'm just going to write my status as 404. You can see head is 404, and I'm going to send a HTML page which has 404 page not found, like that. Okay, so in your like development journey, you might have seen some pages which you write some URL and you can see the page named as 404 not found. That actually comes in the else case of your routes. If you are calling home, it would give you home. If you are calling about, you would get about. If you're calling this, it would give you 404 not found. That means some random URL. If you write some random path in your website, then obviously you would get 404. So here guys, now let's try to work on this. So if I just reload this first of all, so you can see first of all I'm getting 404 not found. Why? Because we haven't defined the path here. So first of all we have to define the path, right? So we are just going to say that first of all get the URL. So if I just say const URL, okay, const URL equals new URL, or you can simply type req.url. Okay, you can simply write this const URL equals req.url. If you write console.log URL, what you would get, so you would actually get the URL whenever you're requesting this. Okay, so if I just reload, you can see that I'm getting the path. Suppose instead of this, if I am requesting for about, so you would get slash about. So that you can see that it's working perfectly. So it's actually needs to be path. Okay, so now it's fine. Okay, so now it's actually fine. And okay, by default you would get like this. So I'm just saying if my path is slash, then I'm going to return this. If my path is about, then I'm going to return this, right? So now if I just reload this, and I need to remove this. Now if I reload this, you can see I'm getting about page. Instead of this, if I load it normally, I'm getting home page. Okay, and one more thing guys, here you can see I'm just sending res.write. So write and end mean different. That means if you write like this, if you write res.write, that means you are writing the page but you are not ending the response. So instead of this, I'm just going to write end. Okay, res.end. Later on we'll see these terms, that is res.write, res.end. And mostly your main purpose of node.js was just to create a very basic web server, but you would be writing these things separately in express.js. So we would learn that in express.js. That would be better. Right now you know that we are just sending this response, and this response. Okay, so now everything would be fine. If I reload this, you would see that this is the home page. If I write some random URL, you would get page not found. Okay, so that's how things work here. That's how routing works here. Okay, now very important thing. Suppose you have a data coming from database. So let me just create some separate file named as what? User data.json. Okay, and it contains some JSON format data. So what you can do is you can simply create a JSON format data, and you can assume that this is an array of users, and this is the JSON format, right? This is the JSON format. So what you're going to do it, you can simply send this data as a response to your front end. Okay, right now you can see it's like this. So for example, if someone calls what? If someone calls path equals slash users. Okay, for example, someone calls this path which gives all the users. So what you're going to do is, first of all, I need to import the fs module to actually locate the file user data.json. So const fs. I hope everyone has watched my video on fs module. We have created this previously. Okay, so here we are just saying that call the fs module, and we are going to read data of this file and send this as a response to front end. Right, so that's what we are going to do. So here I'm just saying that if path is users, for example, Okay, and also by default you would be getting a lot methods like get, post, update, delete. We'll understand that later on. By default the methods here, here, here or here is get method. Okay, get method. But yeah, you might later on see different methods, but right now let's stick with get method. Okay, we'll just understand what is get method, right? So right now you can have this. Now what you have to do is you can simply say fs dot read file, and suppose you want to use read file asynchronous, so it would be asynchronous. And I want to read which file? So I want to read this user data.json. Since they are in same folder, so I just need to write it like this. Then I would be getting two types of things, error or data. If you get the error, so you would just send the error, or you would just write res dot write head, that is 500 is for server error. Okay, 500 code is for server error, and this is the response which I send if I receive any error while reading the file. If everything is fine, I'm just sending the response. Okay, so I'm just trying to read the file and send this as a response when I call the user's path. So let's try to use it. So now if I say that someone calls slash user, so you would receive this JSON format data. Okay, so isn't that crazy? Like you would just receive the data from the backend. And now you can say, assume that in the previous video we have learned a JSON video. Okay, we saw how to use JSON in a dedicated video named as JSON. Okay, so in that video I told you how to use weather data, how to create your own data, or how to read that data. So you would be assuming that this is the API URL which you would call from front end, and you would be receiving that data. Okay, so you can watch that video to get more clarity. So this is the URL which I created from my backend, and I can actually call it in my front end using JavaScript. I can call the same in my front end using fetch method. Okay, so in front end I would be using fetch method to call this API, and it would give me some response. Okay, so it's very good to use this. If you want to use it practically, you can actually use, for example, let me just give you a very good example. Suppose we have a index.html file, and you can assume that this is your front end. Okay, so like, this is actually confusing. So I'm just going to first of all delete this. So this is your backend, right? This is your backend. So I'm going to create a front end. So for example, this was your backend, and suppose I'm going to create a folder and which contains your front end. So I'm just giving a very basic example, and here I'll just open this again with VS Code. So you know that your backend is running on localhost 8000, and suppose your front end is here. I hope everyone knows how to create very basic HTML pages. And here I'm just going to say we have a h1 tag, my front end. Okay, so if I just open it with live server, I hope everyone has installed the live server extension. So you can see this is your front end, right? This is your front end, and your backend is running where? So your backend is running on localhost 8000, right? So you can see this is your backend URL and this is your front end. So in your backend, from your backend, you actually want to get data. That means your backend would be sending some data. What data? Suppose users data. Your backend is sending users data. Okay, when I call this API. So from front end, I would be calling this API. How can I do this? So I can simply say, just call this by simply using fetch method in JavaScript, and later on you know what to do with that, but right now I'm just showing you an example. So I'll just say fetch, and if I say I'm calling this, so automatically the method is get. You don't need to do anything. So I'm just saying convert the data in the JSON format, whatever you receive from the backend, and then print the data. If there is any error, you would use the catch case. So if I write catch, if there is any error, you would receive the error. If response is correct, you would just get the response in your front end. Okay, so now let's try to use this. So this was the back end, this was the front end. So let's see how it works. So if I go to console, so first of all, guys, this is a very common error which you would always see, that is you're not allowed to use this. Okay, you're not allowed to use this. Why you're not allowed to use this? Because we have to apply codes. That means my front end is not allowed to access my backend. Why? Because this can be some random front end. Okay, why would I allow google.com or facebook.com to access my backend? Okay, that's what I'm saying. So your front end might be hosted in some URL. You have to allow that URL from your backend. How can I do this? So I can simply say, for example, if I just write it anywhere. If I write it here, you can see that I'm getting this. So right now my front end is fine. So from my backend, right, for now I'm just saying any front end can access my backend. Later on we'll filter this with specific front end URLs, but right now I'm just going to say even this URL changes, I can still access my backend with any URL. Okay, so for that you need to use course. Okay, so in your backend code, what you have to do, guys, here you can simply use course. So for that, guys, you just need to add a few lines. You just need to add these lines. So you are just saying that res.set header, and I'm just saying anyone can, star means anyone can access my backend. All methods get post, put, delete, later on you learn about this, are allowed, and I am allowing any type of content. Okay, that means whatever type of content I am allowing. So I'm just allowing everything. Okay, I'm just allowing everything. So now let's see. So if I just refresh, so you can see you're getting data. This was your front end, right? So your front end is in this URL and backend is here. So you'd be getting some backend URL and you would be using that in your front end. So you can see I can easily get the data from my backend. Okay, so isn't that great? So definitely you'd be using this in a lot more purposes, but this was a very basic overview how you can actually create a very basic web server, how you can create APIs, how you can like send data to front end. And I just used the JSON for my data, called it in my index.js, right? I allowed it to be accessed from any origin, any front end URL, and I just said that when someone calls /user path, then they would receive the user data. Okay, so that's very great. But now I know that you might have some confusions that you're just getting the HTML page, and in some cases this is very confusing. Okay, and you can see that the lines of code are really big. So for solving that, I will tell you in the next video how you can actually use Express.js. But I hope everyone has now cleared their confusion that why Node.js is actually used. So we actually created a web server and tried to get data into our front-end index.html page using our routes. Here you can see these are actually routes, not the proper APIs, but yeah, you can call these APIs basic APIs which we created today. Okay, you can see we created the user API, we created the about API, we created the normal API, home API, and so on. Okay, so in the next video we'll be refining this by using Express.js. So guys, I hope you understood this, how to create a web server, and definitely you can play this on your own. And once you receive data in your front end, for example you receive data in your HTML page, you can show this here using JavaScript DOM, right? So I hope everyone knows basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. If you don't know, you can watch my previous videos. You will get everything what to do with this data. Okay, so that's it for today. I will see you in the next one. Till then, see you. Have a good day. Bye bye.